Hello, everyone. Welcome. And I'm excited today. We are glad you've joined us, and we're here to learn today more about maximizing innovation. And I'm real proud to say that our guests today are definitely bringing to the table a concept around innovation, that you're going to learn more about creating futures that work and the distinction and the distinct approach to innovation, arts, and leadership, and how that connection is often a source for leadership to find those common obstacles to innovation and how to help the organization and its people overcome those obstacles, and why the phrase future ready is important. So we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to introduce my two guests and my two friends that I've come to know greatly over the past couple years. And I first want to introduce Harvey. And Harvey, help me out. Is it Seifter? Seifter. Thank you. So Harvey is one of the world's leading authorities on future-ready leadership and organizational creativity and arts-based experiential learning. And I've learned so much from Harvey, and I have so much to learn from him. He is the founder, along with Fred Mandel, of Creating Futures That Work, which is the world's leading provider of experiential learning using the arts to develop future-ready leaders, high-performing teams, and innovation organization. In 2022, Creating Futures That Work received the Manager's HR prestigious Company of the Year award for LISA, its leadership and innovation skills assessment tool that supports the whole model for Creative Futures That Work. It's the foundation of that. Harvey is also the founder of Arts of Science Learning, which is a National Science Foundation funded research center that's using the arts to spark innovation in science, technology, education, and healthcare. And in 2016, Harvey led Arts of Science Learning, groundbreaking experimental research that established a causal link between arts-based learning and enhanced creative thinking skills, and the more robust collaborative processes and stronger innovation outcomes. In 2023, Harvey created an Arts of Science Learning incubator for healthcare innovation in Rio de Janeiro in partnership with the Oswald Cruz Institute and Fiocruz. And then earlier in the year, it received Brazil's prestigious 2024 Convergence Award for Innovation. Fast forward, it's just deep and wide here. Harvey taught collaboration and innovation to thousands of business leaders from all over the world at GE's Global Leadership Development Center in Crotonville. And he's also the best and most important, I think, Harvey, if not maybe foundational to what you do, is that he is a classically trained musician with a 20-year career at the helm of distinguished arts organizations, including the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra and the Magic Theater of San Francisco. During this tenure, these organizations garnered 5 Grammy Awards, 24 Obie and Critics Circle Awards, and the Kennedy Center Award. And I have goosebumps just talking about this. Harvey is internationally renowned for bringing innovative programming to millions of viewers and listeners worldwide through partnerships he developed with PBS, Public Broadcasting System, and National Public Radio in the US, in the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, ART, and also in Japan with NHK. The Library of Congress, he's worked with Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, and many, many, many more. He's also got a book that is titled Leadership Ensemble, Lessons in Collaborative Management from the World's Only Conductorless Orchestra. He's also a TEDx speaker, and you can find his TEDx talk that was done in 2023 out there on YouTube. And he was a participant in the White House Global Cultural Initiative and has served as a panelist for both the National Science Foundation and the National Endowment for Arts. He's been a fellow of the Royal Society for Arts since 2005. Harvey has also been featured speaker at the International Leadership Association's Global Conference, Transatlantic Forum, in Taipei International Arts Festival, the Dutch Performing Arts Congress, and so many more. And I couldn't be more proud to be associated with you, Harvey, with Creating Futures That Work. And next, I want to introduce, just as impressionable, is Fred Mandel. And Fred is the co-founder and principal with Creating Futures That Work. It's a consultancy that draws on the precision and focus of science and the insights and skills of arts to elevate leadership effectiveness in the areas of collaboration, innovation, organizational culture, and professional development. And prior to establishing Creating Futures That Work, Fred served as a senior executive with American Express, where he built leading marketing and sales businesses and ran a multi-million-dollar investment company. And during his tenure, he introduced new business models for practice of fee-based financial planning into a large financial service institution. In 2004, Fred launched the Global Institute for Arts and Leadership, a not-for-profit entity whose mission is to build a more peaceful, sustainable, and beautiful world by using the arts to catalyze social change. And he currently serves as chairman emeritus of the board. He is also an author of Can Art Save Us? And co-author with Kathleen Jordan of Becoming a Life Change Artist, 7 Creative Skills to Reinvent Your Life at any stage. He's taught a number of 1-rated leadership series, MIT Sloan School of Management, called The Leader as Artist since 2013. The Leader as Artist series is unique in a way that it demonstrates the application of art making process to innovative leadership and organizational vitality. As an artist, Fred has been featured in the national publication Gallery Guide. He has had one-person shows in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Providence, Rhode Island, and many other, and South Africa as well. And most recently, his bronze self-portrait has been commissioned for the International Conference on the Self, Le Soul, co-sponsored by the University of Chicago and I believe it's the Sorbonne, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Fred holds a PhD in history from the University of Chicago and has an educational master's in psychology from Boston University. He has 3 grown children, 6 grandchildren, and lives in Linfield, Massachusetts with his wife, Karen, a writer and a teacher. And so both of you, I am grateful for this opportunity to talk with you and dialogue with you. And I just want to thank you.
What wonderful intros. My goodness. I'll have to take this to my 3 kids, my 6 grandkids, and my wife and let them know how wonderful you made me sound.
Beyond sound, I think you both are very honorable and noble, in my opinion. So it's an honor. And I want to say, not just to be with you today on this podcast and to be talking about a very important topic that we're going to be dialoguing on, but because, we've connected and we're co-creating and creating possibilities and creating value. And so I want to just show gratitude and look forward to this dialogue today.
Great.
Thank you, guys. So let's start off because both of you have very different, divergent backgrounds. And so talk about how you came together and how has this divergence played out in how you work together?
Harvey,
Harvey, you're on. Oh, let's see here. Let's get you unmuted.
Very good. Okay, great. Thanks.
Harvey, you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about the muting. I'm located in Midtown Manhattan, and we had a little bit of street stuff going on out there. But no, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much. And so Fred and I have both been on these kind of pretty striking, interesting journeys, and in some ways they are the opposite of each other, meaning that we started in two very different places and headed in opposite directions and met in the middle. So I started out as a musician. Music was my first language. I learned to read music before English. As a classically trained violinist and a conductor, theater director, I had my whole career there. And along the way, I became really fascinated in what you could learn through music and through art that could have a really powerful and even profound impact on lots of things that people do in their working lives and the challenges that we all face as a society. And so began working with what we were calling arts-based learning. And so working with artistic skills, processes, and experiences for ways in which we could form high-performing teams and spark creativity and innovation and develop empathy and resilience in leaders. And along the way, I found myself working with some remarkable arts organizations, but also with the National Science Foundation. And through the National Science Foundation, we set up some incubators. I think that Lori just shared a little bit of background on those. And while I was doing one of those incubators, which was up in Massachusetts, in Worcester, a professor there who is an old friend and was a mutual friend of mine and Fred, he said, this is this guy, Fred Mandel, and he's coming out of the world of business, but he's doing some really interesting work with the arts and business and leadership, and you should probably meet him. And so Fred was going to come to the incubator and we were going to meet there, and then a blizzard happened, as happens up there pretty often. And so that never happened, but instead Fred came down to New York and we agreed to meet for lunch. The lunch ended up closing the restaurant down, and by the time we emerged out of that, we were friends and we were sketching out our first collaborations. Fred, maybe I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, thank you. So as Harvey mentioned, we come from 180-degree different directions. I'll pick up on the business end of it. When I was a senior executive with American Express, had a 20-plus year career with them. But toward the end, I felt stuff roiling around inside of me, didn't know quite what it was. So I decided to do what any normal person would do. I enrolled in a sculpture workshop. I had not taken an art class since the 7th grade, but lo and behold, magic began to happen, and I was drawn back and back again. And then I quickly took some workshops in painting and drawing to the point where I decided it was time for me to pursue art and art making more seriously. So I stepped away from the corporate world to pursue that interest, not knowing where it would take me. I think the word that Harvey used earlier was we've both been on a journey, and this journey took me into the arts. But something strange happened along the way, and that is I began to do a deep dive into the lives and working processes of many of the great masters. And what I discovered was that the creative process of the great masters paralleled the creative process of leaders in organizations as they attempt to create and grow an enterprise. I also began to realize that many of the the skills that many of the great masters had mastered over a lifetime of dedication were the very skills that leaders needed in a rapidly changing and disruptive world. So I began to put together programs using the arts, going back into organizations, doing leadership development. And along the way was that serendipitous introduction by Steve Taylor and the lunch in New York with Harvey. And then we had the opportunity to engage in a collaboration which lasted 3.5 years. At the end of that, we looked at each other, said, this was fun. Why don't we formalize our relationship? And that was the birth of Creating Futures That Work.
Beautiful. And it's interesting how, just like in art, it's very harmonic, it's very melodic, it's very unified in nature. Yeah. Melody. Yeah. So the theme of this podcast is maximizing innovation.
Yeah.
And how do you define innovation?
So it's a great question. I'll start by saying that there are a million definitions of it, so I'm not going to give you the definition, but I will share ours. And ours is one that we developed originally through the art of science learning, researching hundreds of different innovation processes all over the world, in large organizations, in small community settings, in nonprofits, in different kinds of environments, looking for what was working, what were the common denominators of success. And what we came to was three kind of key criteria that defined innovation, and then a couple of others that are sort of necessary also. So the three key criteria are really simple: novelty, value, and impact. So novel, that's kind of straightforward. I mean, of course, it leaves some questions unanswered, like how new is new, and how new does it have to be? But there has to be at least some element of novelty for it to be an innovation. The second, value, seems obvious, but maybe is a little trickier, because how do we actually define value? How do we calculate value? How do we measure it? So the answer that we hit on is that the measure of value is actually the market. The market viewed in very broad terms. So we think of the market, and we immediately think of maybe the financial markets and the markets for our businesses and enterprises and so forth. And those are important measures. But there are lots of markets that we all live and work in. So an innovation lives in an ecosystem: people, ideas, contexts. And in order for it to work, people have to be willing to invest in it. They have to be willing to invest money. That's one way of calculating value. They have to be willing to invest their time in it. It's another way of calculating value. They have to be willing to invest their social capital, their networks, their friendships, their relationships. And so there are all these different elements that come into play. But clearly, if something has value, it will be reflected in those decisions of willingness to invest. And that's critical, because without that, you have an idea, but you don't really have the beginnings of an innovation. So we have novelty, we have value, then there's impact. So impact is critical. We start the whole process of thinking about an innovation because there's something in the world that we want to change, some unmet need that we see, some constraint that shouldn't be there, something that's wrong that we want to make right. And so we're either able to impact that through our work, or we're not. So if we can impact that, if it has enough value to attract what it needs to actually succeed, and if there's an element of novelty to it, we have an innovation, almost. Those are three necessary things, but they're not sufficient. There are two other things that actually have to be there. They're closely related to each other. One of them is it has to be feasible. The second is we have to have the capacity to do it. So feasible is general, but it's really critical. I mean, if it requires the first step is to go on a journey of 50 million light years, and then the second step, we don't really care what the second step is. If we can't actually do the first step, it's not feasible. And so that kind of feasibility is really important. And then there's capacity. So it might be feasible in the abstract, but do we have the capacity to do it? And if not, can we get the capacity to do it? So when those things are all present, we have an innovation. And it's a great question, because we came together, as Fred said, around a passion for what the arts can bring to leadership, what it can bring to leaders, and what it can bring in the way of impact. But we came together also in this context of doing lots of work, researching and making innovation happen. We were at an incubator when we first met, and the purpose of the incubator was to foster and to spark these innovations. We began to realize, the more that we worked at this, that the ability to innovate was just linked directly with the ability to lead in a future-ready way, because future-ready means ready for tomorrow. And the only thing we know for sure about tomorrow is that it's going to be different from today, and we're not really going to be prepared for that difference. And so we have no choice but to innovate.
I can listen to Harvey all day long, and I'm aligned very much, obviously, with the model that he put out in terms of innovation. But my experience helps me describe innovation in a little bit of a different way. And that is, in some ways, you can define innovation as a process. You can define it as an outcome. You could define it as a set of skills. But at an experiential level, the way most people experience innovation is, at its core, innovation is change. And change can be both exhilarating and fearful. And institutions, by their nature, tend to be conservative. They don't like change. And people themselves are often fearful of the future, of what might be unleashed through a process of innovation. So they themselves develop a, let's say, fear-based mindset versus a future-ready mindset. And our job is to help them develop or replace, if you will, that fear-based mindset with a future-ready mindset that is rich with possibilities, that sees change and challenge as actual opportunities for innovation and value creation. So while it may appear to be threatening, change can also be good. And there is no more powerful way to have people engage in it and grab a hold of it than through the arts.
So keeping on this conversation of innovation, what's different, what's distinctive about this approach to future ready mindset for innovation? And how do you optimize, how do you maximize, how do you create excellence around innovation? And what is the differentiation and the distinction there?
These are all really great and rich and important questions.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that there are a few things that I think are really distinctive in our approach. One is it's experiential in nature. So what do I mean? I mean that we don't spend a lot of time talking about innovation. We probably spent more time in this conversation than we typically do in sessions that we do with organizations. And it's actually wonderful to be able to talk about it, but it's even better to be in a room with people where we can actually roll up our sleeves and explore and experience together, because that's where real learning happens and that's where real change happens. And so people often think that, for example, the reason that we make prototypes is that we're learning how to prototype, how to build something. And you do get that benefit. That's helpful. But there's something more powerful that happens if you flip that around. When you build something, you're learning. And that's actually how you learn what you really have. And not only are you learning, you're creating these little models that you can show to other people, and they can connect, and they can understand, and we can begin to get their feedback, and we can weave them into the ecosystem, the world of the innovation, and we can learn from them, and we can engage them, and we can co-create with them. And so those fundamental elements are really core to the model that we have. So we work on skills because we know that there are these foundational skills of innovation around readiness to learn and agility and ensemble collaboration and driving change. And these are all very practical skills. And with the arts, we have ways of actually practicing them. And that's, of course, how you get better at a practical skill, is by practicing them. But we also have the mindset that Fred was talking about. And we've developed what we think of as the future ready leader's mindset, because these are the habits, the patterns of behavior, the ways that we embody these qualities that spark innovation and spark innovation in others. And it's a very dynamic process. It grows on itself. The final thing that I'd say that's distinctive about our approach is we have learned how to study it and measure it. So we can actually look at these core skills, these foundational skills of innovation, and we can measure them. Not by asking people, well, what do you think? Do you think you're good at this? Do you like this? Do you not like this? That's valuable information. But we go after something a little different. We actually find out through activities tests. We find out in a hands-on way, how adept are you? How skillful are you at applying that skill to real-world challenges? And that data is pure gold, because once we understand where the strengths are, we know what we can build off of. Where we see the gaps, we can address them and we can find ways to move forward. That's also really core to our approach to innovation.
What I would add to what Harvey said, aside from the experiential nature of it and the arts-based experiential nature of it, and our ability to measure impact, over more recent times, we have developed a unique coaching community that are certified in our ABLE system, ABEL, Arts-Based Experiential Learning System. And we bring coaching into the relationships or engagements with organizations. This enables coaches to help leaders move from learning to embodying leadership, and to take all these tools and processes and accelerate their growth as leaders. So it's a pretty comprehensive, integrated value proposition that we bring in terms of experiential learning, the arts, measuring impact, and coaching.
I want you guys to know that this morning I had this wonderful opportunity to do a hybrid workshop. We had 45 people virtually and 80 people in person. And to open up the workshop, we did the upside down horse, and it was a hit. They had a ball, and they truly, the rest of the workshop, engaged, were wide open, and all of them said that was probably one of the best icebreakers they've ever experienced.
Yeah, we don't do dry, we do fun.
It was truly enjoyable. They said it was so experiential, and for them to, they were doing the whole shit. It was so much fun. Yeah, it was fun. So yes, experiential, skills-based mindset. That mindset piece is incredibly powerful in a lot of leadership development. In my experience over the last 35 years, we haven't until just recently begun to talk about that and how we truly can shift that. Studying and measuring it, the tools are exceptional and the accuracy phenomenal. So it's amazing, and people really truly value the ability to do their self-assessment and realize and absorb that data and the feedback through the coaching as well. I would like to say even that it's more than just feedback. It truly is this, through great questioning and through great preparation and placement of language, it gives that individual the opportunity to strengthen, to enhance, and to influence those skills and those abilities, not just in the workplace, in their life, and very, very powerful. So I love that this program and its services and its tools and its models and the research that you've done to support it, it does differentiate you, and it does give you a distinctive approach to creating high value in the organizational workplace as well. So kudos to you both. So my next question, you've dabbled in this, you've touched a little bit on it, but why the arts? And maybe even describe what you mean by the arts.
Let me jump in, and Harvey, please add to it. So the arts are all the arts. We cut across all the artistic disciplines. When people think about the arts, they'll often think of the visual arts.
Right.
But we use music, dance, improv, storytelling, theater practices and principles, jazz, string quartets, all of that. And we bring that in. We even use an ancient Japanese form of painting on water called suminagashi painting. So from the exotic to the familiar, but they're all the arts. Why the arts? Because the arts are the purest form of experiencing creativity and innovation. And when we engage people in the arts, what ends up happening is not only do they get connected to their own creativity, but their learning is more durable because it is based upon unforgettably well-designed arts-based experiential learning activities. So they emerge from it having arrived at insight on their own, by themselves. It's not an academic coming along and saying, here's a concept, take this concept and practice it. No, they discover it themselves. They put their own language around it, and therefore it lasts for a lot longer. The other thing I would say is that the arts making as a process prepares people for a range of capabilities and capacities that make them more adept and agile. So you can't be engaged in art making or art doing without developing empathy, without developing resilience, without developing a set of attitudes toward what you're trying to create that open up all kinds of possibilities. So the artistic experience is not only fun, enjoyable, but it leads to deep learning and change.
Excellent. Harvey?
The arts are, I think of them as a kind of a universal alphabet of human expression. They're accessible to every person. We all have them within us. We can all find things in them about ourselves and the world around us that we didn't know. We can find ways to bring it out to the world, to share with the world, to connect and collaborate with the world. When we talk about empathy, we know it from our experience, but we also know it from the neuroscience, which has been very clear that when you trigger neural circuitry through art making, you're triggering common neural circuits with empathy. We see it in study after study. We see it in how people actually engage and relate. We did field research where we worked with teams that were identically composed, working on different kinds of innovation problems. And the only difference was that one set of teams spent a few hours over a month-long period making art in one way or another, and the other teams didn't. And we saw that their emotionally intelligent behaviors tripled. We saw that there were all of these behaviors of trust and mutual respect and transparency. So there's all that side of it. And the arts engage people in what they're most passionate about. They spark and evoke curiosity, which is at the beginning of all learning. I think of them as kind of, I said at the start of this, that they're universal tools of human expression. I also think of them as universal learning tools. In fact, my one sentence version of what I've learned in working with the arts is that you can teach almost anyone almost anything with almost any art form if you do it right. And doing it right means giving them the opportunity to get their hands on it and get out of the way and have the experience.
So where does leadership come into the picture, and what's the connection between innovation and this experience in leadership, and what's that impact?
There are a whole bunch of connections.
Yeah.
So one of them is that in a world that's defined by change, that's defined by radical, disruptive, discontinuous change, the ability to actually imagine a different world and the ability to create within it is kind of foundational. So I think of the foundational skill of being a future-ready leader means that you can adapt, you can respond with agility, you can be connected with the world around you, because those are the adaptive people in situations, and you can do all that in ways that renew themselves. So when people work with the arts, they tap into the things that make them strong, the things that make them hopeful, that make them resilient, that make them empathic, that make them connected to other people, that connect them to their purpose and the broader purpose of their organizations. They bring those things to people and to the organizations that they lead. So these are really powerful things. I think of an art studio of the kind that we work with all different art forms is kind of like a jungle gym for developing your leadership, because you're working all of these skills, and in the process you're developing all of these mindsets. Because what is a mindset after all? It's a pattern, it's a habit, it's a kind of habit of mind embodied in behavior. And the more that we do those things, the more skillful we get and the more motivated we become. The arts really are ways of doing that.
There's a wonderful leadership thought leader, leadership guru by the name of Warren Bennis, who sadly passed away a few years ago. But he basically said there are two ways of being a leader. One is you can get up on the stage and dance and sing. The other is you can build the stage that enables others to get up and sing and dance. So if you think about what leadership is really about, leadership is about shaping the culture that supports, encourages innovation. So you really can't separate from an organizational perspective the interdependency between innovation and leadership. Leadership either activates it, supports it, encourages it, or gets in its way.
There's something else that we've seen, and that's that people love the arts. They love making art. They love experiencing it. And every organization is striving to find ways to overcome the enormous fragmentation that exists in our lives today and the disconnects between people and the organizations that they work with. And finding those ways of engaging people is a real challenge that all of our organizations face. The arts leapfrog over them. People are engaged instantaneously and profoundly. And so the question is, can you work with them well? Can you find good ways to use that engagement and to actually connect people to the higher purpose that they're trying to achieve in their leadership?
So what are some of the most common obstacles to innovation that you've encountered, and how do you help those people and those organizations overcome those obstacles?
Well, one of them is fairly practical. People in organizations are so focused on short-term goals,
Right.
like reaching their quarterly earnings ratio.
Right.
So that's a perfect example of how you succeed into obsolescence. You can achieve your quarterly goals and ultimately fail because you're focusing on only the short term, not the long term. So that's one thing. The second thing is there's a fear of change, as I've mentioned. Another would be people lack the readiness, the know-how, how to do that. But the big question to me was brought home by the head of Pixar a short while ago, who posed the question. And the question is, how do you lead when you don't know what's next? In other words, we're living in a time of no normal. Pre-COVID or during COVID, people kept on expecting, well, the new normal is going to arrive. The new normal is going to arrive. It never arrived. And that's because we're in an environment where it never will rise.
Right.
So in that kind of environment, it's difficult for people to not react versus looking at where the proactive opportunities are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love it. And getting them in a state of mind, like you're saying, and that shifting. So
Yes.
part of that help, part of that support, part of overcoming that begins where, and how do you help them?
So a lot of it starts with an understanding of what is it that we're actually trying to do here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about leadership, what do we mean by that? What do we want people to bring to that? What do we want them to take away from that? When we think about innovation, there's so much of a sense of innovation is that thing that happens over there, and we have an office for that. We have all structure for that. They do innovation. I do my bottom line. I deal with my customers. I do what I do, and that doesn't work so well in reality. In reality, we all need to lead.
Right.
And we all need to innovate.
Right.
And of course, if we're all leaders, then we all have to also learn to follow, because there are no leaders without followers, and the other way around. And so there's sort of these really important questions that are baked into an organization's culture. How do you perceive the role of leadership?
Mhm.
What is my responsibility? What are my opportunities? When do I lead and when do I follow? And how do I understand which is which? And how do we integrate that in ways that actually realize the greatest possibilities for the people and for the organizations? And these are all things that we can talk about them, but we can do our work with experiential learning and actually experience them and learn for ourselves, and then unpack them and understand them and build on those.
That deconstruct, reconstruct is something that happens in art all the time.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
the time. Yeah.
It's at the very heart of it. So what we do is we try to give people the opportunity to have rich experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they've had the experiences, we really encourage them to think and reflect and journal and capture and then share what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
What did I just experience? What was that actually like? What did it feel like? We talk a lot about the objective outcomes, but of course, change doesn't only happen through the right numbers, and success doesn't only happen through the right numbers. It also takes the right stories, and it takes both of them. They're both critical. So we start with that, what just happened, but then we go from there. How do I connect what just happened in that experience to where I'm trying to go, what I'm challenged by every day, what our organization is doing? And so by constantly immersing people in these experiences and then going through that process of deconstructing it, reconstructing it, connecting it to what comes next, and then going on to the next one, you're laying down foundations and pathways for continuous growth, continuous learning, and continuous renewal for the organization.
Built on things like trust and credibility, respect, all those wonderful, wonderful attributes. I'm sorry, Fred, you were going to say?
I was going to share that it's not unusual for me to get a question from a leader in an organization. Maybe it's a high potential or emerging leader who asks, well, what do I need to do to develop myself as an innovative leader?
Mm-hmm.
And my response, tongue in cheek, often is go to a museum, eat a cookie, and play with children. What do I mean by that? So one of the key things to becoming an innovator is to expand your capacity for observation. And by going to a museum and looking at art with fresh eyes from different angles, with different kinds of questions, enhances and expands your observational power. What do I mean by playing with children? Well, one of the key things of an outstanding leader is that they cultivate a sense of curiosity and inquiry. And children are the embodiment of that. So if you play with kids, you will be swept up in their own curiosity. And eating cookies, what does that have to do with innovation? Well, we live so much in our heads that we don't tune into our other senses. Yeah. We've got multiple senses that are sources of insight and wisdom. And if we eat cookies and spend some time savoring the taste and allowing that to be a model for how we connect with our other senses, we will expand our sources of knowing and insight. Those three simple things, everyday kinds of things, they're not unusual, are ways to really grow. A very quick story. I was working with the CFO of a major company a few years back. Mm-hmm. He was dealing with a problem. He was obsessing over it. So I said to him, write out the question you're trying to answer. He wrote it out. I said, put it in an envelope, put it in your desk, and go to the nearest museum. I asked him, could he clear an hour or so from his schedule? So he managed to do that. Went to the museum. He was in Minneapolis, went to the Walker Museum. He called me back and said, he sounded breathless. He said, Fred, I can only last for 45 minutes. I was looking at all these pieces of art and it activated so many thoughts in my mind that I had to go back and write them down. And lo and behold, it gave me a pathway into solving this problem. So people will often say, well, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. And my response is, you're not taking time out of work. You're just finding a different way to do work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So,
go ahead, Fred. I mean, Harvey, go ahead.
Yeah, that maybe brings a few of these things together. So I have a saying which is kind of a favorite, and we use this a lot in our workshops. Innovation begins with I. And when we think about innovation and how it doesn't work so often and how it's frustrating, we can all make long lists of the reasons why we think our organizations aren't innovative, why we think we can't innovate, all the things that work against it. But if we start with the idea that it begins with I, and that we all have an I, that we all have that possibility, that set of possibilities, and the arts are a wonderful way to have little experiences that activate those qualities in I and in our eyes both, that allow us to kind of take those first steps. Those first steps can go very, very far.
Mm-hmm. I want you guys to dive in, because all of this has led me back to future ready, that term, future ready leader. What does that really mean? Be specific, and why, what about it is critical and important?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that's really critical and important about it is to be future ready. You have to be ready to learn. Mm-hmm. And we've seen in all of our work, we've seen it in the field, we've seen it working with organizations, and we've seen it in the data from the research, that these are skills that are not as well developed as they can be in so many of us and in so many of our organizations. Mm-hmm. And especially when times are really challenging, and these times have been pretty challenging for lots of organizations and lots of people. Part of us are just really quick to say, well, I don't have time to learn. I don't have time to focus my attention on that. I have to do X and Y. And of course, X and Y are really important. They're vital. But at the end of the day, these core skills of being readiness to learn, to be open to new information, even when we're being inundated with more information than we want to deal with, to be curious and to really act on our curiosity through inquiry. And maybe the most important piece of this readiness to learn is the tolerance for uncertainty and ambiguity. This is really kind of key. And we know from our research that this is the single most poorly developed skill in the leader population as a whole. And it's also not one that people are generally excited to work on. I mean, people wake up in the morning and say, gee, today I'm really going to get good at dealing with uncertainty. Uh-huh. You know, people are saying, I've had too much uncertainty. I don't want to think about more uncertainty. But of course, that's kind of at the heart of so many things. So that ability and willingness to learn and readiness to learn, the agility that goes with that, the ability to adapt behavior to it, the deep kinds of collaboration. We've all kind of gotten so used to the term collaboration that we often don't really think about the word or what it means. So I like to use the word ensemble, as in a musical ensemble, as in a theater ensemble, where people are all working together at a deep level. They're sharing their visions, their passions, their creativity, their leadership. And so everybody leads sometimes and everybody follows sometimes. And we've all seen great ensembles work and what they can do. We've seen high-performing teams. We see them in the arts, of course, with jazz and chamber music and improv theater. But we see them in a hospital emergency room when there's a crisis in the neighborhood and people come flooding into the place. And it's exactly the same kind of high-performance ensemble teamwork that's really kind of at the heart of future readiness. And then finally, the ability to drive change, which starts with driving change in yourself and then in our organizations.
So a quick story, and that is a number of years ago, we were moving from one city to another, and we had temporary housing. And that temporary housing was next to a church. And its bells rang every hour on the hour. Now, my wife, Karen, is a light sleeper. So, of course, the bells would go off at 11 p.m. and 12 p.m. and so forth. So she took it upon herself to call the minister and said, is there any way that you could stop the bells ringing at 11 o'clock so I could sleep? And the minister paused for a minute And she said, we really can't do it. It's mechanized. So my hope is that you will befriend the bells. So I love that idea. And part of it has to do with a way of reframing this. And in relationship to what we're talking about, it really means embracing change, embracing uncertainty, befriend the change. And I think what underlies virtually everything that we are saying, it's a very hopeful, positive message of agency. That we've got the ability, the capacity to change things for the better. And in the world that we are living in, there is so much pessimism. There is so much despair. We are on the edge of the great resignation, where people are checking out. But when you integrate and bring the arts into this sense of agency, you marry those two things, you enliven possibility, you inspire people to embrace that and go on that journey of change.
You know, every one of these skills that we talk about, they're dynamic skills, which means that we can get better at them. We can change them. And change is so much at the core of all of this.
It makes me think that you keep saying that you take this into real life. We do real life scenario, and so we're leaders and we're stressed, we're burnout. Right now there's pressure, there's lack of resources, there's pressure for things to be different, and there's turnover, there's disruption in the marketplace that's forcing us to work 12, 14, 16-hour days. What should I be focusing on? And in order to grow professionally and add value, what really needs to be priority?
I would encourage people to think back to a absolutely transformative, uplifting experience they've had in their lives. An experience where they felt inspired, where they feel connected to something larger than themselves. My hunch is that where that will lead them would be to some kind of an artistic experience, whether it was attending a concert or a symphony, or watching an unbelievably powerful dramatic movie, or seeing some paintings, or something of that nature. So I think one of the things that I would really encourage people to do is to reconnect with those experiences, find opportunities to do that, and to reflect on what is it in those experiences that touch me deeply, that uplift me, that I can bring into my leadership, that I can bring into my work, that I can bring into my life, so that those things really enrich the texture of the way in which I live my life and make that journey.
And I encourage the 180-degree reversal of that process. So, and I say I encourage that they're both wonderful, and they kind of bring us together. But I would focus on what is that thing that you most want to do, that you most want to achieve, that you most want to accomplish, the reason why you're really there. And find some way to build a little model of it. And when I say a little model, that could be a poem, it could be a sketch, it could be a little back of the napkin sketch, it could be something that you construct out of Legos. It doesn't matter what it is. Build something and use that as your point of departure, not as just this, okay, so I built this expression of it, and that's good. But now, how do you use that to communicate it to other people? How do you use that communication to learn from them? How can you make your idea better? How can you rehearse it and play with it? And suddenly you're off on this path of discovery.
And I would suggest that when you do that, you're bringing joy into the process.
Almost yeah, it's almost organic
Yeah.
when you're engaged in that and committed to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very powerful.
There's one other thought that relates to all this. So we talk about the measurement instrument that we've developed, Lisa, and that it's unusual in that we actually gather our data from how people either are or aren't able to show skillfulness with these.
Right.
But there's something else. In art, we talk a lot about negative space, meaning what's not there, as well as
right.
what's there, and learning to see what isn't there, and that being a very important skill in business. So if we think of the negative space around our model of how we measure, what's not there is we don't actually measure anything about the fixed qualities or capabilities of somebody. So we never say, this is what you're good at. These are your strengths. These are your weaknesses. You're an A, you're a B. We don't do that. We can't actually, we don't really believe that we even have the information to tell anybody anything about who they are.
Right.
What we can do is we can tell them about what they're good at doing right now. What's their skillfulness with these areas, and with that information, they can take it from there.
So knowing that we change, we evolve, what do I do personally to continue to grow, to continue to learn? I've engaged in the Lisa, the tool. I've engaged in arts. I've engaged in various workshops that implement these arts experiential learning experiences. So what do I do next? Because life happens, things change. And here I am in a very new place. I've been promoted. I've gotten a new opportunity in front of me. What do you do personally to continue that growth and that development?
Well, I'll speak personally, and that is, I have a artistic practice.
Yeah.
And I engage in that on a regular way, in all the time. And that is my source of renewal. It's my source of coherence. And there is a highly synergistic relationship between my artistic practice, my personal life, and my professional work. So I am constantly challenging myself in my artistic practice to go beyond. So one of the stories that I really appreciate is Matisse, Henri Matisse, the great French artist, once said what made him different was that many of the artists that he knew accepted good enough. If they created works that were good enough. But he pushed beyond good enough to what was extraordinary at a personal cost. And that personal cost was a lot of self-doubt, a lot of disappointment, a lot of despair, but also exhilaration and breakthrough and accomplishment and so forth. Right. So the artistic practice for me is a safe realm to experience all those different things that then enable me to take that into my professional work.
Powerful, very powerful. And one thing that I would say, the tool and the models, the experience itself really does it. And I love this phrase. I always say it, but it creates that space for grace. It really truly opens the flow, and it truly allows you that maybe it is the time to connect the dots, and that's part of, that's a term that's used, and it also not only connects the dots, but that flow and that fluidity of self-knowledge, as well as input, as well as the data, as well as opening and being inclusive to others and their ideas and their thoughts. So it creates this very wholesome environment in which to make better decisions and choose a behavior that's going to be conducive for better outcomes. I can't say enough about this and how powerful it is for those that experience this.
That word choice is such a powerful phrase that you use. So I think one of the things about developing a future-ready mindset has to do with giving you the emotional, cognitive
Yes.
Capability to make choices with courage.
Yes.
We talk a lot about the suspension of disbelief. The concept is a really ancient one. It goes to the birth of theater, and for me, theater along with music resonates with pretty much everything that I do. And I view so much of the work that we've developed as bringing theater to learning in different ways and with new audiences and with new kinds of impacts. But this idea of suspension of disbelief that Aristotle first started talking about 2,500 years ago, that theater can do. So what is it that we're suspending our disbelief in? Well, one of the things is we're suspending our disbelief in our own abilities. So we are all plagued with all of these self-limiting beliefs. We go through life with them, and I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I'm not good enough to do that. Someday they're going to find out that I don't really know how to do it, and then I'm really going to be in trouble, or whatever it is. And we can suspend that, and we can suspend it. I mean, I'm guessing, part of why when you started that workshop with the upside down horse, it was so powerful, because you had all these people in the room and in Zoom, and they're suddenly experiencing for themselves what happens when you suspend your disbelief. And you say, okay, I don't care that I don't know how to draw a horse. Maybe I can draw a horse. And there it happens. So that's one kind. But there's another kind of disbelief that's maybe even more important, or certainly as important. And that is, we're all these high-performing, highly accomplished people. We're humans. And so one of those things that's characteristic of us as humans is we get into a group of other humans in a room, in a situation, and we are absolutely convinced that we have the best ideas in the room, always. That's the one thing that we can all agree on. But, of course, there's a problem there. And we can't all have all the best ideas all the time. And if we do, what are we going to miss out on? So that's kind of the other kind of thing. We learn to suspend our disbelief in the other person's ideas. We don't give it up entirely. We suspend it. So we're going to come back to it, and it's important. It's great that we have that. But we're willing to suspend it long enough to maybe just try the other one on for size a little bit. And maybe that's the birth of empathy.
And courage and curiosity, all that. And I love, again, I'm going to get back to the term I used at the beginning, and that's, it creates this harmony. It creates this unity. It creates this flow. Very, very powerful. So what's next for you two, and what's next for creating futures that work?
Yeah, well, we're just now moving into the market with this really wonderful and exciting program that in a lot of ways it brings together the work that Fred and I have been doing over many, many years, but in a new way. And we call it the Art of Future Ready Leadership. And this is a program that's really developed for the next generation of leaders, the emerging leaders, the high potential leaders, those that are in leadership roles but now are about to move into much more senior roles. And so what it is it's an experiential learning journey. And we bring people together. We work individually. We support them through our coaching community and the expertise that they bring. We're able to track progress and measure it with our assessment instrument. And we bring them together for actual studio experiences, all of which is designed to, over the course of this 3-month period, to really use the arts and use the power of experiential learning and use the science behind the arts that we've developed to spark all of these skills, all of these mindsets, and develop the future-ready leaders that our organizations desperately need and that we all want to be.
Fred?
No, I mean, I don't have anything to add. I mean, that's our focus. And we're very excited to bring together new ways of learning, but it's all based upon our arts-based experiential learning approach. And we think that there is a major need for it in the marketplace, and we're excited to bring it into the world.
No, and I can't thank you enough for doing that. I know Harris Whitesell Consulting is honored to be engaged with that with you, and we are very excited that we took the risk and engaged, because now we are definitely part of that coaching environment with you and certified in your program. Looking forward to sharing that out and being able to connect all of our network to you, and for the opportunity for that type of development that's deep and wide and purposeful. Before I close this out, though, I do want to share, we've got Rajan Erickson, and I believe I'm pronouncing his first name correctly. However, he does say artistic practice enriches work, humanizes it, honors Benjamin's aura. So I would assume you guys know what that means. And then he goes on to say harmony, unity, and flow sounds like the music to me. And so I just wanted to give you guys that input from Rajan. Yeah, definitely. It sounds fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Oh, Ryan. Thank
Ryan,
you,
yeah.
Ryan. Oh, I appreciate that. I do apologize for mispronouncing. That's good. I learned something today as well. I appreciate that. Well, Fred and Harvey, I just want to say thank you. This was a great dialogue, and I think you gave an opportunity for our network and our audience that's here today and that will be listening. These podcasts get listened to over and over and over again and tapped into and tuned into for months. It's kind of like one of those coffee table books. Yeah. So I expect that there's going to be dialogue and conversation and opportunity and possibility that we're going to grow on and be able to optimize as they come along. I look forward to connecting those leaders to this and to you. And in the meantime, I offer you guys both, how do people connect to you? Where should they go? How do they reach out? And what questions should they be asking you?
Wow. Okay. Well, first, Lori, before anything else, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful, wonderful experience. It's a great opportunity for us, of course.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that you're part of the community, and more than part of it, you're really a leader within it. And we're excited about the partnership that we're developing around the Art of Future Ready leadership and all that we're going to be doing together. So thank you for that. So one way you can connect with us is through the website, which is right there on the screen right now, futuresthatwork.com. You can connect with us directly through that very easily, and our email links are there. You can find us on LinkedIn and all of the other resources. What should you be asking? You should be asking, how can I do this for myself? How can I bring this to my organization? How can I learn more about it? How can we connect and create something together? We're excited Excellent. To do all of those things.
Thank you, Harvey.
Ditto. Thanks for the opportunity, Lori. This was absolutely wonderful. I love the questions. I love the energy of the conversation. I look forward to a deepening collaboration between us. And I would look forward to hearing from anyone in the audience who has curiosity about what we're doing. We really want to bring this work into the world. We're looking for allies who want to share that journey with us, and we encourage you to be in touch.
Excellent. Well, I will say this, be careful what you ask for, because we always get it. And we're fully prepared to manage and support and enjoy the process as we go through this. And I look forward to having our clients and our friends and those very unique, hardworking, successful leaders have an opportunity to experience this and realize the outcomes that it brings, because it is distinct, it is unique, and it is very different than all the other leadership development that I do with leaders. So again, thank you for your hard work over the decades of work that you've done, the tools that you've brought to the table. The model that you have is significant, and it's very beneficial in this, and it creates positive, lasting impact in this world. So I just commend you again. And if you'll hang on, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today. So thank you to our audience, and thank you to those future listeners as well. We appreciate you. And please reach out and connect to Harvey and Fred. If you can't get a hold of them, you are more than welcome to reach out to myself or Lynn. We're happy to discuss this with you and connect you as well to both Harvey and Fred. But in the meantime, make sure you take time to maximize excellence. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Maximize Excellence. Visit our events page on our website for details on upcoming podcasts, and visit our YouTube channel to listen to past episodes. And remember to ask yourself at the end of each day, did I do my best to maximize excellence today?